Hi, I'm Brad Leishman. I'm one of your academic advisors in computer science at Waterloo. And in this video, I'd like to talk about a question we as advisors get asked a lot, namely the question of transferring into computer science. So how do you do it, why is it the way it is, and so on. So what I have prepared are a number of questions that students have asked us in regard to transfers, and what I'd like to do with you is simply go through them all and give you some answers. So the first question is, why is it like this? Why would we do things the way that we do? If you've talked to a computer science student, they may tell you a number of things about their experience in computer science. They may tell you that computer science is difficult to get into. They may also tell you that CS courses are difficult to get into, that they fill up quickly and you may not get the course you want when you want it. And so sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating. What a lot of people may not realize is that those two statements are somewhat linked. When it comes to staffing a course, we only have so many people available to teach a given course in a given term. We only have so much TA support, and when the course is being taught in the classroom, we only have so many seats to accommodate students. So our capacity for teaching our CS courses is limited, and so we can only accommodate so many students in our program. What used to happen was that the standard for getting into computer science was listed in the course calendar as a 70% CS major average, so that's your CS major courses starting from CS 136, and a 65% math average. And what ended up happening was that made computer science easier to get into by a transfer out of first year, so apply into math from high school and then transfer from math to computer science. It made it easier to get into computer science that way than it did to get into computer science out of high school. As a result, our enrollment started to grow to the point where we could not accommodate all the students that we had, and so something had to be done. And what the department decided was, in any given year, we only can have so many people apply into the program, and how many people that is going to depend on the current size of the student body. And so now every year the director gives us a number, the director of the school, he gives us a number of how many students that we can afford to accommodate in terms of transfers in the coming year. And then basically we have to sit down, it's a group of advisors who does this, and decide, okay, so which students can we take? And this comes down to basically accepting the best applicants, whatever best means. But as a result of that, as a natural consequence, the transfer process into computer science, it becomes competitive. So basically we're this way because we are lucky to have a great demand for our program, but we only have so much capacity, so we have to be a little bit more selective in terms of who we let in. So that's sort of why it's done that way. In terms of how do you transfer, the mechanics of transferring is actually fairly easy. You basically go to this website that I just put up here, which takes you to a listing of forms, and you'll look for one that says something like transfer from math into computer science, or if you're a non-math student, look for one that says something like transfer from non-math into computer science. At any rate, pick the one that is appropriate to your situation and then just click through and fill it out. It'll ask you things like, do you want the BCS or do you want the BMath? And if you're wondering which one is better, neither one is better. Neither one has better transfer chances than the other. It's all the same pool, so it's completely identical in terms of your probability of transferring. So go ahead and pick the one that makes the most sense for what you want to do with your degree. So you can go ahead and do that. The form itself opens usually around the middle of the first month of the term, so somewhere in the middle of January or May or September, and it closes around the middle of the last month of the term. So it will close somewhere around the middle of April or August or December. So in between those, in those 3 months in between, is when you have your opportunity to go ahead and fill out the form. You can do it whenever you like. And then in between terms, the forms will be shut down, and there will be a day when the advisors get together, as a subset of advisors get together as a group, and decide, okay, how many spots do we have? What does our applicant pool look like? Who can we let in? And of course that happens between terms because we need your grades available in order to make these decisions. But we usually make our decisions fairly quickly, and you would be hearing from us very shortly thereafter, so that if you are a successful transfer into computer science, you can start right away the very next term taking CS courses. So that's basically how it's done. Just basically go ahead and fill out the form. You'll notice that there are some free form questions there for you to answer as well. Things like, why are you interested in computer science, or questions like that, to just sort of give us more of a feel for where you're coming from. Helps us to get some perspective on your application. The next question students would ask us is something to the effect of, what are my chances, or how good is good enough? Which is a perfectly reasonable thing to want to know. It just turns out to be a very tricky question to answer, because in some ways it's impossible to answer. The standard for how good is good enough is going to depend on how many spots we have available, how many students want them, and what their grades are. So there have been terms when an 82 CS major average was enough to get you in, and there have been terms where a 92 CS major average has not been enough to get you in. It really depends on the size of the transfer pool, the number of applicants that we have, and the strength of the transfer pool. And in terms when we have a large student body, our capacity for transfers is going to be lower, and therefore it's going to be more difficult to get in. And as of fall 2020, our student body is fairly larger than we would normally expect. So yes, transferring into computer science out of fall 2020 is going to be a little harder than it has been previously. And in terms when the student body is of a lower size, then transferring into CS would correspondingly get a little easier. But there's no way to know exactly what grade is going to be good enough. So the only advice we can give you is do your best, and if we're able to accept you, then we will, and if we're not, then we certainly hope that whatever you're in right now is still a program that you would be satisfied with. Next on the list would be something to the effect of, students will ask us questions like, is it better to focus on my math or my non-math? If I do really, really well in CS, is it okay if I don't do so well in math? Is it important that I take a full course load? How important are my communications courses? Is it important if I took advanced or enriched courses? Basically trying to figure out exactly how to allocate their time and their effort and their resources to try and come up with, I guess you might say, the best score in terms of transferring in. And it's perfectly natural to expect you to want to know that in terms of, how can I make myself look as favorable as possible? It's a reasonable question to ask, but it's also a very difficult question to answer, specifically because we as advisors, we want to be equitable in terms of what we tell every student. We don't want to tell some students, hey, look, all you need to do is this and it's going to get you in. That certainly, we wouldn't be doing our job as advisors in terms of being fair to the entire class. But at the same time, it's not really a question that has an easy answer either, because it's not the case that we just take the numbers from your transcript and feed them into a machine and then out comes a yes or a no. No, I mean, your application is going to be looked at by a group of human beings, and if you do really, really well in CS, that's great. But if you're doing poorly in everything else, yeah, we'll notice that. And it's not possible to really quantify exactly what the effect of that is going to be. I mean, we're going to take a look at your application along with everybody else's and try and make a reasonable decision about who's got the best chances of success in our program. And so, does it matter that your math grades are lower than someone else's? Maybe. How much does it matter? It's hard to say. We can tell you that the number one thing that we look for is your performance in computer science, because we are judging you based on how we perceive your potential to succeed in computer science. And so obviously your computer science grades are going to matter quite a lot there. But it doesn't mean that your other grades don't matter. because if your computer science grades are great and your other grades are not great, I mean, that also could mean that you don't end up graduating. So we can't quantify exactly how important everything is. All we can say is it's all important, but your computer science grades are what we look at first. And I can also tell you that the other stuff on the form, your other grades, the free form answers, they matter less the further away you are from whatever the cutoff ends up being. So if your grades are way, way above the cutoff, whatever that ends up being in a given term, then the other things certainly don't matter as much. It's not that they don't matter at all, but you know, the really good computer science grades can compensate for some things. And on the other side of the coin, if you're well below the cutoff, then the other things aren't going to somehow help you either. It really comes in when you are right around that borderline, where we've got a bunch of students all floating around the cutoff and we have to make some hard choices. Then we have to look at not only your computer science grades, but all the other things as well. So it's not that we don't look at them for students who are far from the border, but we look at them a lot more closely if they are. And this also explains why we can't really tell you exactly what a cutoff is, because it could be the case that based on the other information that someone with an 83 gets in and someone with an 84 doesn't. And so the cutoff isn't actually all that well defined. These things do sometimes happen. So all we can say is do your best. And if you've done your best, then you can sleep well at night. You've done everything you can do, and hopefully we were able to let you in. But if we're not, hopefully you're still happy with the program that you have. What happens if I'm accepted? So if we are able to accept you, then you will get an email from us saying something like, hey, congratulations, you've made it into computer science. The form that you filled out contained in it implicit permission for us to go ahead and modify your program. So we'll go ahead and make an adjustment to your program without needing any further authorization from you. We'll put you into CS, whether it's the BCS or the BMath, whatever you wanted. We'll go ahead and do that. And we will then, if you're planning on taking courses the very next term, we will work with you to try and get you into whatever courses come next, so you can go ahead and start taking computer science courses immediately. If it turns out that it wasn't necessarily that you wanted to transfer into just CS, but you wanted to keep your old major and make CS a second major, that's fine. We can do that as well. Just reply to the email and let us know, hey, I don't want to transfer out of my old program. I want to add CS as a second major. Just let us know, and we can make that happen as well. All right? But by default, we're assuming that you're just going to transfer from whatever program you're in into computer science. So, yeah, great. If we're able to accept you, it's all good news, and we'll do our best to get you off and running into your new program. If you're not accepted, you will also hear from us with an email that tells you, I'm sorry we weren't able to let you in. And in that case, what are your options? Well, you can always apply again. In a new term, it might be the case that the standard is a little lower in a future term than it is in the term when you applied, so you might actually fare a little better. In the meantime, if you've only taken CS 135 and 136, you still have, as a math student, the opportunity to take CS 245 and CS 246. Those are our 2A courses. And that gives you the advantage of having a little bit more for us to judge you on, and also for you to have the opportunity to possibly raise your grades a little bit. If you do better in CS 245 and 246 than you did in CS 136, so that your CS major average goes up, then you might be a more favorable transfer case in an upcoming term. So you can go ahead and do that and try and transfer again. If you've already taken CS 245 and CS 246 and we haven't been able to transfer you, well, you can still apply in another term, because again, it is possible that the standard for an upcoming term might be a little bit easier than the one that you just made it through. We don't know, but you can always apply. It doesn't cost you anything. If you've taken CS 245 and 246, there's a handful of computer science courses at the upper year level that are still available for non-CS students to take. Chief among those would be CS 370 and CS 371. keeping in mind that you can only take one of those courses. So if you want to take those to try and help your CS average out again and apply again, yes, you can do that as well. Eventually, hopefully we're able to accept you, but if we're not, there may come a point where there's really not much more you can do to raise your CS average because you've taken all the courses you can take. You can still apply again and hope that you catch us in a term where the standard is lower. That is your choice. But at that point, we would hope that you have a backup plan. Like, it may be the case, unfortunately, that we may not ever be able to accept your application. And if that is the case, then we hope that you have something else at Waterloo that you can take that you'd be happy to graduate out of. So yeah, the bottom line is you're welcome to try again, and at some point you may have to decide that CS at Waterloo is maybe not going to work out. Finally, if you're an out-of-faculty applicant, so we do get applications from outside of the Faculty of Math. Most of them come from engineering, some will come from science, and some will come from the other faculties. And in that case, the procedure is mostly the same in the sense that you still go to that web page and fill out a form. This time it'll be for a non-math student applicant. But in addition, you must also apply for admission to the Faculty of Mathematics. You have to transfer faculties from whatever faculty you're in to mathematics. And that is a separate process, and it's judged by the math advisors, not by the computer science advisors. Now, you can apply for acceptance to math and acceptance to computer science at the same time. We must both accept you. For more details about how to apply to the Faculty of Mathematics, I would encourage you to contact a math transfer advisor. You can get in touch with them through the math undergrad office. But essentially, yes, you would apply to the Faculty of Mathematics and you would apply to the School of Computer Science at the same time. You might hear from us first, actually, in which case, if you do, you'll get if we're able to accept you, you'll get an acceptance that sounds something like, congratulations, you're accepted to the School of Computer Science if you are also accepted by math. Once you hear from math, if they accept you as well, then we can go ahead and complete the transfer. So just keep that in mind, that there's 2 applications you need to fill out. In terms of course equivalencies, there are some computing courses out there that we would regard as transfer equivalent to CS 135 and CS 136. But you should be aware that because those courses are not taught the same way that we teach our first year courses, we do hold those courses to a slightly higher standard. We'll ask for slightly higher grades from those courses than we would ask from CS 135 and CS 136. And that's because those courses are not as good of a match to the rest of our program as CS 135 and 136 are. So there's a certain amount of uncertainty about how exactly performance in that course is going to transfer. But if you are taking first year computing courses that are outside of CS 135 and CS 136, I would encourage you to talk to a CS advisor to find out exactly how those would transfer and whether it makes more sense for you to take CS 135 and CS 136 themselves as an out-of-faculty student before you transfer. CS 135 and CS 136 are available to anybody in the university, so if you would like to take them and we have space, you're welcome to do so. They may be anti-requisites to computing courses you've already taken, in which case please talk to a computer science advisor to discuss your options. All right, so yes, we do welcome out-of-faculty applicants. Just keep in mind that you have to be accepted to math as well as computer science, and that if you take computing courses other than ours, we are going to hold them to a slightly higher standard because they are not a perfect fit for the rest of our program. All right, that's a lot of information that I've given you. Hopefully it has answered your questions about the mechanics of transferring and the realities of the situation we're in terms of how many students we can admit and so on. If you have any further questions, feel free to either see us in office hours or contact us by email. The email address is right above my head here. So if you are planning on transferring, I wish you the best of luck. And if we're able to accept you, then great. And if not, then I wish you the best of luck in your program, and hopefully we'll see you in some of our non-specialist CS courses. All right, thanks for watching.